The topic for discussion is anatomy of paranasal sinuses or paranasal air sinuses. Paranasal air sinuses are air containing cavities. Each sinus are named after the bone it resides in. There are four pairs of paranasal air sinuses. The first is a frontal, maxillary, ethmoidal, and sphenoidal. So the paranasal sinuses are frontal sinus, maxillary sinus, ethmoidal sinus, and sphenoidal sinus. In this diagram, you can see the sinuses. Light blue color indicates the frontal sinuses, yellow color indicates the ethmoidal sinuses, green color indicates the sphenoidal sinuses, and dark blue color indicates the maxillary sinuses. So these are four sinuses. What is the function of paranasal sinuses? The function of paranasal sinuses are, firstly, it makes the skull lighter and they add resonance. Let us discuss about each sinus in detail. First, let's start with the maxillary sinus. Maxillary sinus is the largest paranasal sinus. It is pyramidal in shape. Its base is pointing to lateral wall of nose and apex lies laterally in the zygomatic process. So, what is maxillary sinus? It is the largest paranasal sinus. Okay. In this diagram, the light purple color indicates the maxillary sinus. Okay, you can see the base is pointing towards the lateral wall of the nose and apex lies laterally in the zygomatic process. Okay, and the shape of the maxillary sinus is pyramidal. Coming to the relations of maxillary sinus, anteriorly it is related to the facial surface of maxilla, posteriorly infratemporal and pterygopalatine fossa, medially is medial and inferior meatus, floor it lies at the alveolar and palatine processes of maxilla, and roof lies at the floor of the orbit. So these are the relations of maxillary sinus. Okay, what are the relations of maxillary sinus? As we have seen in this diagram, you can see the relations. Okay, whereas the roof lies at the floor of the orbit. Okay, the floor lies at the alveolar process and palatine process of maxilla. Anterior wall is the facial surface of maxilla. The posterior wall is the infratemporal and the pterygopalatine fossa. Medial is the medial and inferior meatus. You can see in this diagram. So these are the relations of the maxillary sinuses. Okay, in this diagram you can see both front view and from the side view. Okay, next comes the blood supply. The blood supply to maxillary sinus is through the facial, infraorbital, palatine arteries, and lymphatic drainage is through the submandibular nerves, and nerve supply is through the infraorbital, anterior, medial, and posterior superior alveolar nerves. So these are the blood supply, nerve supply, and the lymphatic drainage to the maxillary sinus. What is that? Blood supply, lymphatic supply, and nerve supply. Okay. Blood supply is mainly via the facial artery, infraorbital, and palatine artery. In this diagram, you can see the blood supply of maxillary sinus. Okay, the infraorbital artery is clearly seen, and the palatine artery is also seen. Nerve supply is through infraorbital nerve, anterior and medial superior alveolar nerve, which you can see in the next diagram. This is about the maxillary sinus nerve supply. As you can see, the diagram clearly indicates the nerve supply, that is infraorbital nerve, medial superior alveolar nerves, anterior superior alveolar nerves, and the posterior superior alveolar nerves. Okay, that is about the maxillary sinus. Okay, now next comes the frontal sinus. What is frontal sinus? Frontal sinus, it resides in the frontal bone. It is the second largest sinus, and it is asymmetrical, and usually it is paired. Okay, it resides in the frontal bone. It is the second largest sinus. It is asymmetrical and is usually paired. In this diagram, you can see the frontal sinus, which is yellow in color. It resides in the frontal bone. Okay, so this was about the introduction of the frontal sinus. Okay, next comes the relations. The relations anteriorly, it lies over the skin or over the forehead. Inferiorly, it lies over the orbit and its contents. Posteriorly to the meningeal and the frontal lobe of the brain. Okay, these are the relations. Anteriorly, skin over the forehead. Okay, you can see in the diagram its relation. Anteriorly is skin over the forehead, inferiorly is the orbic and its contents, posteriorly is the meningeal and frontal lobe of the brain. These are the relations of bronchial sinus. The arterial supply for bronchial sinus is supraorbital artery. The venous supply is supraorbital and superior ophthalmic veins. The lymphatic drainage, even these draining to the submandibular nerves, and nerve is the supraorbital nerve. Okay, what is the arterial? The main artery is the supraorbital artery. Venous drainage is supraorbital and superior ophthalmic veins. Lymphatics are the submandibular nerves. Nerve is the supraorbital nerve. In this diagram, you can see the arterial and the nerve supply. The lower diagram indicates the arterial supply, mainly is the supraorbital artery, and the upper diagram is the superior orbital nerve, which shows the nerve supply. The arrow mark indicates the supraorbital nerve. The coming arrow indicates the supraorbital artery. This was about the arterial supply, venous drainage, lymphatic and the nerve supply. Now coming to the next sinus, which is the ethmoidal sinus. It resides in the ethmoidal bone. It is divided into three groups: anterior, posterior and sphenoethmoidal recess. Number varies from 3 to 18. So what is it? Number varies here from 3 to 18. Ethmoidal sinus numbers varies from 3 to 18. Whereas the frontal sinus is asymmetrical, maxillary sinus is paired. Remember these three differences. In this diagram, you can see the yellow color indicates the ethmoidal sinus. It is divided into three groups: anterior group, posterior group, medial group, which is also known as sphenoethmoidal recess. Okay, this is about the ethmoidal sinus. Now let's see its relations. Above, the ethmoidal sinus is attached to the orbital plate of bronchial bone. Behind, it consists of ethmoidal concave plus orbital process of palatine bone, and anteriorly it is related to the lacrimal bone. What are the relations? Above is the orbital plate of a bronchial bone. Okay, now let's see the blood supply. The blood supply of is through this sphenopalatine artery. Okay, anterior and posterior ethmoidal artery. The lymphatic drainage is through submandibular nerves and the retropharyngeal nerves. The nerves are anterior and posterior ethmoidal nerves, orbital branches of the pterygopalatine ganglion. So this is about the blood supply is sphenopalatine artery, anterior and posterior ethmoidal artery. Lymphatic drainage is submandibular nerves and retropharyngeal nerves. Nerves is where the anterior and posterior ethmoidal nerves and orbital branches of the pterygopalatine ganglion. In this diagram, you can see the nerve supply that is for the anterior and posterior ethmoidal nerves and other branches of the pterygopalatine ganglion. The arrow indicates the anterior ethmoidal nerve, posterior ethmoidal nerve, down of which is the branch of posterior ethmoidal nerve supplied in the sphenoidal sinus. In this diagram, you can see the arterial supply. The Roman number 2 indicates the sphenopalatine artery. Roman number 3 indicates the anterior ethmoidal artery. Roman number 4 indicates the posterior ethmoidal artery. So this is about the sphenoidal sinus. Okay, sorry, ethmoidal sinus. This was about the ethmoidal sinus. Okay, so we have discussed three sinuses till now, and the last sinus would be sphenoidal sinus. What is sphenoid sinus? Sphenoid sinus is resides in the sphenoid bone or in the body of sphenoid. It may be single or paired. Even the sphenoid sinus is asymmetrical. Other sinus which is asymmetrical was the bronchial sinus. In this diagram, the yellow color indicates the sphenoid sinus. Let's see the relations. It lies below the sella turcica, and sphenoid effusion shows the skull base fracture, and it is related to optic tract, optic chiasma and internal carotid artery. To what it is related? Optic tract, optic chiasma and internal carotid artery. Where does the sphenoid sinus lie? Below the sella turcica. In this diagram, you can see the sphenoid sinus very clearly. Okay. It lies in the sella, below the sella turcica. Okay, so this was about sphenoid sinus. Now let's see the blood supply. The blood supply is to the posterior ethmoidal artery. The lymphatic drainage is going to retropharyngeal lymph nodes, and the nerve supply is to the posterior ethmoidal nerve. What is the nerve supply? The nerve supply is to the posterior ethmoidal nerve. So this was about the blood supply, lymphatic branching nerves and nerve supply of the sphenoid sinus, right? And previously we have seen about each sinus indical. In this diagram you can see the blood supply. Blood supply is to the posterior ethmoidal artery, which is clearly seen in this diagram. Okay, so these are about paranasal sinuses. What are the paranasal sinuses? There are four pairs of paranasal sinuses. What are those? Bronchial, maxillary, sphenoid and ethmoid. Okay, right? And what is the function? They act resonance and they make the skull lighter. These are the functions of paranasal air sinuses. The most commonly asked question would be maxillary sinus and its relations. So you need to mention about the maxillary sinus, its relations, its blood supply, and draw the diagram. And what are the next sinuses? Next sinus would be the bronchial sinus, which is asymmetrical, and the next sinus is the ethmoidal sinus.